Welcome to On the Chain.
I wanted to go ahead and throw this one up there, but this is called Protocol Magazine. It's an online publication. Come on, get the buttons right. Here we go. So it was an article. The title of the article is "The DotCom Crash Has Lessons for Crypto." If only we can remember them, because, that was 21, 22 years ago. It's pretty much a lifetime ago. And, who really remembers what happened 5 years ago? So it's a catchy title. Goes on to say crypto's meltdown has stirred memories of the 2000 tech crash. Quite honestly, we've had worse things happen, but I think the fallout, the troubles that Celsius has run into, some of the trouble, some projects, I think that's more the fallout what they're talking about. And it's probably not even as bad as what happened in the .com. But the reason I wanted to show this article, and again, a very long article, but I wanted to show because none other than CEO Brad Garlinghouse is quoted in here. And let's just focus in on some of his statements. Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse, who ran telephony startup Dialpad in 2000 and 2001, said the crypto crash, like what happened 2 decades ago, is about how excitement got ahead of reality on some of these things. That's a really good quote. Excitement actually sort of got ahead of reality, right? There's what you want to happen. There was, at the time, they were slapping anything with the .com on it. It's like a word that was available. You put a .com after that, and guess what? That then became like the next big thing. And very much like crypto, there were companies searching for problems to solve instead of solving an actual problem. There's a very, very similar, and they always say history repeats. We can say, well, geez, we'll never do that again. That'll never happen again. And then it continues to happen over and over. Happens with the new bunch of people that are on the planet, and they're not old enough to remember what the previous people on the planet did, or maybe the people before them. So we see that this has a commonality that runs through it. Garlinghouse also said there were a bunch of leverage built into the system, and then we had an unwinding of that, he told Protocol, citing the UST stablecoin collapse that helped fuel the crypto slump. He added, Terra Luna was the first shoe to drop. Maybe there's going to be more shoes to drop, you think? And then Garlinghouse, the market isn't going away. The opportunity isn't going away. And I like how he finishes that off with a positive. Started off with a little bit of like, hey, this is what it is, but we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere. Game on is what essentially he's saying. So there are a couple pull quotes here to go to the next one. Garlinghouse, who also served as a Yahoo executive, recalled a site called drcoop.com. Founded by the eponymous former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop, raised over $84 million in its 1999 IPO, even though some people question the financial potential of a medical information site. Obviously, the skeptics were right, Garlinghouse quit. drcoop.com folded in 2001. So didn't make it very far, but so what? It had a name recognition. They had drcoop.com, and they raised $84 million, and that went right in the dumper. Some startups were too early. Catherine Dowling, Chief Compliance Officer and General Counsel at Bitwise, worked as an investment banker at the Webvan IPO. Online grocery store went public in November 99, filed for bankruptcy in July of 2001. So yeah, that's kind of how it happened. And then Webvan and Pets.com, which you've heard Jeff mention a number of times, both online stores were spectacular .com failures, but Instacart and Chewy subsequently embraced their ideas and thrived. And, there's something to be said about being too early. Sometimes you can be too early. And I've certainly been there with some ideas and companies. You're just too early. Had pet stores within right around the corner from where they lived. They just stopped by on the way home from work, and they would just go in and grab their pet supplies or what have you. There wasn't really a benefit to buying online. But you look at Chewy is crushing it right now, where you can buy pet supplies and dog food and you name it, anything for your pets. Garlinghouse noted that while drcoop.com was a flop, another medical information, WebMD, became successful. The .com era also paved the way for investments that led to faster growth of survivors like Google and Amazon. Telecom bubble at a company, the internet bubble meant the fiber optic networks were in place to link data centers to ever faster home broadband connections, which became huge drivers for e-commerce. And, one of the things, Mark Cuban sold broadcast.com. I think he sold it to Yahoo. He sold it for $1 billion. And on all the demos, if you go back and read the story, all the demos, he was always in an office that had what back then they called the T1, which was a very fast internet connection. However, when you're doing broadcast and the rest of the world wasn't ready, didn't have super fast internet, so it always worked when he can demo it in a company or a place. They're like, this is fantastic, but the technology wasn't there to actually deliver it, and that folded within about a year. So that went the way of just pets.com and everything else. Garlinghouse acknowledged there have been questionable crypto offerings, like DeFi lending products with astoundingly generous yields. Ripple stayed away from that, he said. We didn't understand how this is going to really be sustainable. And I've always wondered the same thing myself as Jeff, as you guys have probably wondered, like, okay, and is that a Ponzi where you're always relying on new blood coming in? How do you sustain it? It has to come from somewhere. And at some point, if initially, it's got to run out at some point. Garlinghouse also pushed back on the idea that there's not real value in the blockchain technology that undergirds crypto. Ripple's payments volume is setting records, an annualized 10 million. He said recently on Twitter, and it's still growing. At what point do we agree that scale, he said. And I think there were a couple other pull quotes. Garlinghouse also cited NFTs, noting that people have appropriately been critical of some of the hype cycle around a market that exploded last year and then took a hit in the crypto downturn. Bored apes are one thing, but ideas behind the tokenization of assets to make them more tradable, to build smart contracts around them, is very compelling. If you make the conclusion that the meltdown of art-based NFTs equates to NFTs aren't a thing, then I think that'd just be a massive failure of logic, he said. When pets.com went out of business and when Webvan failed, then most people didn't say the internet isn't really a thing. They're like, oh, it's going to fold. But isn't that weird how everybody suddenly thinks the same thing now? They're like, oh, it's going to go. It's going to go away. Meanwhile, we're 10, 11 years into this so-called experiment. I remember back in the 90s in my ute, working around the internet, doing some front-end stuff, building websites. And I remember a colleague of mine, an ex-colleague of mine saying, isn't that just a fad? I mean, how long is that going to last? That's kind of dumb. And we all know people that said that. So it's interesting to draw the parallels between what happened with the .com crash and what's happening in crypto. So I thought it was a good article. I really liked Garlinghouse's pull quotes there. He did a nice job. The last one here, he just said, the point I'd like to make is crypto is absolutely here to stay. It's very clear the industry is here to stay and will continue to grow. So it's good to see the optimism in that piece as well.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.